What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Scott Procter alongside my guy Matt Morris. The Minnesota Vikings traveled to Chicago and Soldier Field on Monday Night Football for an NFC North showdown against two very average teams at best. But Matt, I have a simple question for you. With two head coaches very much on the hot seat, between Matt Nagy, Mike Zimmer, who do you think should or will be gone first?
Well, I'm a little biased, so I think I've been saying Matt Nagy should be fired for probably going on a year now.
Yeah.
So obviously Nagy should be fired, but who really deserves it more? I would say Mike Zimmer to this point, simply because of the underperformance of the Minnesota Vikings, not just this season, but in the past few seasons. He's been there since 2014. He only has one really impressive playoff run, which only happened because of the Minneapolis Miracle and kind of a fluke end of the game play. They then go to the NFC Championship game and lose to the Rams. The next year, they win one game and lose in the divisional round. This whole thing has just been kind of a waste of a lot of potential with Minnesota, between that defense early on with all the great names that they had, and now this offense where you lose Stephon Diggs and add Justin Jefferson, and then you get Adam Thielen, you have Dalvin Cook, you have Alexander Mattison. I mean, this is a top-tier offense, and you really don't know what to expect from them come 1 week or another. I mean, they can, win in these big-time games, or they're going to lose to the Detroit Lions. And I think the issue here is, when you look at that team on paper, I think they should be competing not just for a wild card spot, but be one of the top higher teams in the NFC. And it just doesn't happen. And I think at some point you have to look at leadership. And so unfortunately, Mike Zimmer, even though I like him, I liked how he's been coaching this team in the past, I think it's time to move on if you're the Vikings and trying to capitalize on this talent that you have on the current roster.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think it goes without saying that Matt Nagy needs to be gone. He has overstayed his welcome in Chicago as the Chicago Bears head coach. But Mike Zimmer is, weirdly kind of in that similar situation in terms of just underachieving, in terms of, especially when you're looking at the amount of talent that's on this Minnesota Vikings roster, as you just alluded to. Mike Zimmer has been the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings for now 7 seasons. He has 2 playoff wins to show for it, and one of those wins, as you mentioned, was literally a miracle in the Minneapolis Miracle. Shout out Stephon Diggs, still one of the greatest playoff postseason plays I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely.
But going with that, I think Mike Zimmer is gone after this season, unless the Vikings can find a way to, turn around the second half of the year, make a run at the playoffs. I thought he might be fired after the loss to the Lions, which would have made a lot of sense. And if we're being honest, too, the first time those two teams met earlier in the season, it took a last-second Kirk Cousins comeback for the Vikings to beat the Lions. So you struggled twice now this season against one of the very worst teams in the NFL, and there's just been too much talent on this team for years now to be consistently mediocre. And you have to look at Mike Zimmer for that. And I think a point you bring up too, in terms of you just never know what you're going to get out of the Vikings week to week. You have to look at coaching. So Mike Zimmer is on the hot seat. I would expect him to be elsewhere at season's end again, unless the Vikings can miraculously put together a second half to write home about. But talking more about the Bears, who have just a ton of issues in their front office. What do you make of GM Ryan Pace? Does he need to go alongside Matt Nagy, or does he kind of deserve to stay?
Well, Scott, after that draft, he was on the hot seat after last season. Absolutely. I think everybody knew that Nagy and Pace needed to show something. The draft, in my opinion, this past year, getting Justin Fields, in particular, that saved him and allowed him to continue. And he's going to be the GM of the Bears for a little while longer, simply because of his ability to find talent in the draft and bring it in. And then you kind of at that point have to just wash your hands as if you're Pace and be like, all right, I got the guys.
Yeah.
The biggest problem he has is he hired Nagy, so that was a bad call. But if he can get a guy that actually can produce the talent that he drafts, then you might actually have a team there. But there's been a list of guys, some bad ones, obviously, as every GM does in the draft, but there's been a lot of stellar picks in in his draft history.
A lot of players that I love.
That show you that he has a knack for finding talent in the draft.
100%. And you said a lot of what I agree with.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are in the minority in terms of
actually
thinking Ryan Pace hasn't done such an awful job, at least compared to the ineptitude that Matt Nagy has showed at head coach. And again, Ryan Pace deserves some of the credit for the hiring, obviously, of Matt Nagy. But just looking at Ryan Pace's history as GM of the Chicago Bears, it's not all bad. His first draft pick was a disaster.
Yes.
He took Kevin White with his first draft pick as the Bears GM.
Yep.
But also in that draft, he got Eddie Goldman, Adrian Amos, two really good players. The next year, he gets Leonard Floyd and Cody Whitehair, two very good players still playing in this league. The next year was the indefensible selection of Mitchell Trubisky over Deshaun Watson, over Patrick Mahomes that you or I will not try to defend.
I'll simply put it this way. Matt Nagy was able to get him to a 12-4 season as the quarterback. It seemed like Nagy gave up on him after that season and tried to force them into doing something else. Again, another knock on Nagy.
100%. And again, to that point, Mitch Trubisky was a Pro Bowler that season. And also in that Mitchell Trubisky draft, Pace brought in Eddie Jackson and Tariq Cohen, who were all pros as rookies. Since then, he's drafted Roquan Smith, David Montgomery, Darnell Mooney, and of course, he did what I implored him to do for months heading into the 2021 NFL draft, which was trading up to draft somebody like Justin Fields, which was obviously a move that I love. So Ryan Pace, all in all, hasn't really been all bad. And he's the reason, this is the biggest thing, Ryan Pace is the reason why the Bears, as bad as they've been over his tenure there, they have not been on the same level as teams like the Lions, the Jaguars, the Jets, the Giants, those teams are consistently drafting high. But the difference between the Bears and those organizations is there's a steady influx of good elite talent coming into the Bears organization. Ryan Pace deserves a lot of credit for that. And for that reason, I think he deserves his chance to hire one more coach after, Matt Nagy's inevitable firing. But that's how I see it. The Bears have a lot of questions to figure out over the next few months before the 2022 season. But was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
They're late round picks. A lot of these are second, third, fourth, fifth round picks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Roquan, Leonard Floyd, and Justin were all, high level first round picks.
Right.
But a lot of this is later in the rounds, which, granted, he's traded away the first round pick, so you have to draft well in the later rounds. Right. But he's done it. David Montgomery has been one of my favorite picks, what he's been able to do.
Roquan is mine. I mean, he's been an absolute monster. Again,
the next great Chicago Bear linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bit of a no-brainer coming out of Roquan coming out of Georgia. I mean, he was just a monster. He was one of those Georgia linebackers, physical, can run sideline to sideline. It was kind of a no-brainer pick, but again, Ryan Pace made it. He deserves credit for that.
Absolutely.
And, we'll transition for one more quick topic here. Talking about the Minnesota Vikings, do you think they can make a playoff run here?
I really think they can, just off the simple fact that I've seen this team play well. I've seen them compete at the highest level. They can beat the good teams. The question is are they going to play to that level every week?
Yeah.
Or are they going to play down to their competition and lose to the Detroit Lions? Which, I'm sorry, Minnesota, but I'm going to keep bringing it up because you lost to the Detroit Lions. You gave them their first win on the season.
Right.
So that's the issue. I mean, and so do I think they can? Absolutely. I'm not confident in the slightest that they can actually pull it off, but they definitely have the ability to do so.
We agree again. I think Minnesota certainly has the potential to do so. Again, what they've been able to kind of harness offensively is truly, I don't know if there's too many other teams set up better offensively than Minnesota Vikings. No. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is going to always have questions surrounding him, especially in primetime, big game moments. But Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson is completely unguardable.
Absolutely.
He's one of the best wide receivers in the entire league. And, he and Adam Thielen make one of the best 1-2 punches at receiver in the entire league. That offensive line is young and very good. Kirk Cousins is one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the league this season. The defense has to come around, especially that young secondary. But that's what Mike Zimmer is there for. He's a defensive-minded guy.
He is.
At the moment of this recording, Washington football team and the San Francisco 49ers each have wild card spots in the NFC. I don't think either of us, believe in those teams too much. Maybe the 49ers we do.
Obviously,
right.
yeah.
But needless to say, the NFC is completely wide open, and there's still football left to be played. Minnesota Vikings will certainly probably have something to say about how the NFC playoff picture ends up shaking out. But that's going to do it for us here at BVM Sports with Scott Procter. My guy, Matt Morris. We'll catch you next time.